Hey everyone, I want to talk about satiety, also known as hunger, but I think satiety sounds a lot cooler. Whenever I see patients in the clinic, I always try to get a breakdown of how they eat, what they eat, how often they eat, how they relate food to stress, hunting, what time they crash during the day, if they get a good night's sleep, if they're exercising, what they used to weigh, what they weigh now. So there's a lot of things that I try to extract from that one 15-minute visit that never turns out to be 15 minutes. But the more I understand about a patient, the more I can help them with the disease process they're suffering from. Or if they're healthy, the more I can tell them about where they might be going if they don't get healthier. So satiety is a sense of satisfaction. It specifically relates to satisfaction you get after eating. And there is a food relationship in this country, but unfortunately it's getting to be more of a relationship to fast food and stress eating, which is not healthy, and it probably is contributing to the amount of obesity that we're confronted with. But I think that the information that's out there with regards to food and the way we interpret food, the way we break down the science of food is really awesome. You just have to know how to utilize the basics, or which basics you want to utilize. So again, I'm going to talk about satiety, and while I'm talking about it, I'm going to make my usual supplemental fiber that I have in the morning. So if you happen to be one of my patients that comes to see me in the morning, I'll usually be carrying around this 8-ounce cup full of 3 teaspoons of fiber. The fiber I just pulled out here is psyllium. This is a Now Foods brand psyllium. I just use a container because it's bigger, but I actually took the psyllium from Organic India and I put it in here. I like the way this stuff tastes. Be real careful. I've purchased this stuff. I think it was from Target. This is like eating something with diarrhea. Probably causes diarrhea, but be very selective of where you buy and be willing to test out or experiment with several different types of psyllium. The idea is always to take advantage of a whole food plant-based diet. And over here we have fiber in the form of greens, that's salad, low caloric intake and high volume, and with the right amount of dressing it'll make you feel satiated. I have a lot of fish in the form of sardines, herring, salmon. I also have this is one of my favorite sausages, tofurkey. It's tofu or soybean. The psyllium that we use is supposed to be in supplement to whole foods. If you can have your fiber in a whole food plant-based diet, then better off. I'm just using this as a supplement. Now I'm a pescatarian, that's a vegetarian that eats fish, but I also try to maximize on my fiber. Fiber helps in a couple different ways. Number one, it helps to pull cholesterol out of the gut. Number two, it also gives a sense of satiety. The more fiber you have in your food, in your meal, the more satiated you feel, and the slower your stomach empties out because it's full of fiber. It takes longer to digest fiber. Again, fiber can be in the form of psyllium husk, or it can be in a wide variety of legumes, beans, vegetables, fruits, grains. Now I don't mean bread, I mean actually whole grains like rice, quinoa, millet, spelt. So all those things help by increasing the amount of time that the stomach takes to digest the food that you eat. The longer it takes to leave the stomach, the slower it gets released into the bloodstream, the lower the glycemic load. That means satiety. So if you have something like a liquid form of Red Bull, it'll give you no fiber, it'll give you a high glycemic index sugar, it'll get high in the blood fast, and you'll dive down from the insulin response quickly, hunting for more food. That's the reason for fiber. There are other things you can do with your meals that also increase satiety, make it last so that you don't hunt for food in between meals. Or for some of my patients that have that sense that after a big meal they still have to have something else to eat, like an ice cream or cakes or chips, especially when they sit in front of the TV. The concept would be if you're satiated, you might see that or by habit go for that food or that bag of chips, but you won't finish the whole bag because the stomach will send those hormones to the brain saying, I'm okay. It just takes a little bit of time before the ghrelin hormone from the stomach gets to the brain, maybe 15 to 30 minutes. And that's the deadliest time because if you continue to eat during that time, you just had either another serving or finished a whole bag. So if you can have items in your meal that will slow down, make the brain a little bit more happy with what it just ate, then you'll be safer and you won't eat as much in the long run. So I mentioned protein. If you can have whole protein, you can have it in red meat, but my guys that have issues with high cholesterol, you should really try to avoid red meat. Other options, if you want to try to mix your whole food with an extra protein source, would be actually taking protein. This is a nut butter protein that is good for my runners or my athletes because it's already, all you have to do is mix it up. If you have enough of a water source, you take this, suck it in, take your water source, and you're good. This is very thick, tough to swallow, but in a pinch, it'll be a protein source. Other options too are brown rice, but protein powder, pea protein, which is getting a lot of traction lately, and then there's always hemp and whey protein. So the only good thing about having it in powder form is if you're on the go and you've had your whole food meal for the day, you can put extra protein in your drink in addition to somewhat of a normal meal. I usually will take the macronutrients of the day and make the breakfast and lunch more protein dominant, and then make the dinner or evening meals a little bit more carbohydrate dominant. There is a reaction that you can get when you have a carbohydrate dominant meal. If you do a heavy carbohydrate meal for breakfast and for lunch, it might just make you sleepy, which could be why a lot of the first period classes in grade school and high school are really tough to get by, because we either didn't eat properly or you had a heavy carbohydrate meal in the form of pancakes, bread, cereals, milk, high carbs. I really think protein should be the way to go, and if you follow the paleo diet, Lauren Cordain talks about using the dinner from the night before as your breakfast, which would again be more meat. It doesn't have to be red meat. It can be solid in the form of fish, eggs, other forms of protein as I mentioned. But those are two different ways to get satiety: fiber and protein. The third way is fat. Now it has to be healthy fat. And again, I mentioned the fish because deep water fish are actually a protein source and they're a fat source. If you don't like using fish, you can always take omega-3 fish oil. And don't worry about the burping. I have a hint on my tutorial for total omega-3 that talks about freezing the capsule, and it stops the burping effect. But the problem is a lot of people forget that the bottle's in the freezer. So as far as the type of fat, if you can get healthy fats from fish, great. If you can't, I like to substitute with fish oil, and maximum fish oil is about 2,000 milligrams of total omega-3 that the stomach can handle and absorb properly. Anything after that usually gets pooped out. So if you're going to do what you're supposed to do as far as total omega-3 per day, that would be about 4,000 to 6,000. You have to divide it up. 2,000 in the morning, 2,000 at night, maybe 2,000 in the afternoon. So if you have fiber, if you have protein, if you have fat, you've done what you have to do to maximize on the satiety value of that meal. If you're one of my morning patients, you'll see me walk around with this. This gets gelatinous just in the few minutes I've been talking. This gets gelatinous to the point where you can actually hold the spoon up and down, and it's kind of like grits or oatmeal, but taking this during your day will give you about 4 to 6 grams of fiber. And that 4 to 6 grams of fiber only costs you 4 to 6 grams of carbohydrate, which is a nice way to get fiber in without getting too much of a carbohydrate load so you don't gain weight. The other things to do with satiety are consider supplements specifically for losing weight. CLA seems to be a popular source for calming down the body and decreasing hunger. Usually it's 3 times a day. Again, it's another healthy fat. Garcinia cambogia in some studies has shown modest improvement in postprandial sugar. If you take this before your meal, the sugar level in the bloodstream after your meal is decreased. So always good if you're diabetic. You can decrease the amount of sugar that's floating around the bloodstream after your meal. In theory, that decreases your chances for diabetes. But more importantly, it also controls that insulin response. Remember, insulin will be secreted by your pancreas if your stomach senses a very carbohydrate or fast food meal. If your meal is well balanced, then you'll have less crashing 2 to 4 hours later. If you can control it with this, great. There's also fiber in capsule form. If you can get fiber in capsule form, which is a little pricey, you can always take it with your meal and it'll increase the bulk effect to the meal in your stomach. And essentially it makes the meal hang out in the stomach for a longer amount of time, making you feel full. If your stomach feels full, the brain will sense distension and the brain will say, I'm still happy. Kind of like Thanksgiving when you have to stretch the waistband. If you're so stuffed after Thanksgiving dinner, you don't want to eat anymore. It just becomes nauseating to eat. Well, I'm not saying to use these techniques of fiber, protein, and fat to become nauseous, but if you just control it to the right degree, you can actually prevent yourself from hunting for that extra meal or plate or bag. And the objective is that if you can get a good healthy meal in, be comfortable with the taste, not have to hunt for food in between your meals and keep it to a regular 3 to maybe 4 times a day, then that'll help your rhythm for eating meals establish a regularity. If the gut establishes a regularity, then the brain establishes a regularity. If the brain is happy, then it'll get to sleep at a certain time, it'll wake up at a certain time, it'll ask for the meal the same time every day. So if you keep on doing that regularity, hormones are secreted on a regular basis, nice and smooth. You'll have less problems with diseases manifesting due to irregular sleep patterns, hunting all the time, grazing between meals, essentially overeating. Overeating is not healthy for anybody, whether you're working on decreasing your body weight or you're working to decrease the inflammation from a cholesterol problem. In worst case scenario, you're trying to heal up from a cancer or a heart attack and you have a lot of inflammation you're trying to control. This is an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. The idea is if you can control what goes into the stomach with good quality, then the body will have every building block it needs to do what it has to do. And that means live on without any diseases, happy and healthy till the age of 90 to 100. More importantly, if you're trying to start on a new lifestyle change, you still have to learn about the basics of caloric intake. And I think that satiety is also based on what you're used to. If you're used to eating a large volume of food, you don't have any regard to the calories or the value of that food, it sometimes will be very eye-opening when you start to record the value in the form of how many calories are in your serving, how many carbohydrates are in your meal, or even what ingredients come with your food sources, what kind of preservatives are used. All this is very enlightening and should be learned because the food industry that's out there is not there to take care of your health. They're there to sell food. And the best kind of food that they can think of is the food that you'll keep on asking for. So the bottom line is every disease process that we run into can usually be improved upon by the right nutrient sources and the right meals and the right eating plan. It all comes down to eating a mostly whole food plant-based diet, but to make the switch from McDonald's or steak and bread and milk to something of this sort, it takes a little bit of learning. So you have to be patient with yourself. You have to seek out proper information from good sources, but you have to be willing to spend the time and empower yourself with knowledge and keep on learning. Nobody ever gets it the first time around, but sometimes if you try a nutrition practice and you learn about the basics and you declare it worked or it didn't work, then you can go on to the next author or the next registered dietitian or the next nutritionist, try to find their strengths, apply it to you and see if it is sustainable for you. It has to be sustainable, has to be palatable, and it has to make you satiated. This is a lot of information, but hopefully it gives you some building blocks to figure out how to be a healthier you and to be disease-free or at least bulletproof to the next challenges that are coming up. If you found this information helpful, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, subscribe to me for weekly words of wisdom and stay healthy.